Hello, I'm Darren Magee, and today's question asks if I would discuss the relationship between someone with borderline personality disorder and their favourite person. Now, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel for future updates on mental health related topics. But just as a reminder, this video is not a substitute for support from a mental health professional, nor is it a tool to be used to diagnose someone. Now, borderline personality disorder is a condition that's often associated with fluctuations in moods and behaviours. It's part of the cluster B group of personalities, which is characterised by erratic and unpredictable behaviour. People with borderline personality tend to be very sensitive, so the smallest thing can trigger an intense emotional reaction, which can be quite problematic, not just to themselves, but the people around them as well. And to date, there are 4 recognized subtypes of borderline personality disorder. There's petulant borderline, there's quiet borderline, self-destructive borderline, and impulsive borderline. Now, I've made videos on these previously if you want to check those out. But although there may be differences, even subtle differences in these subtypes, there are still a lot of similarities as well. And one of those similarities is an intense fear of abandonment. Now, the favourite person for someone with borderline personality disorder is someone who's a source of comfort, a source of reassurance, of connection. It's someone that they may be emotionally dependent on. Now, that could be a partner, it could be an ex-partner, it could be a friend, a relative, a work colleague even. Sometimes it can be someone they've just perhaps met, but they may have heard a lot about that person, so there's already an expectation created around them. And there can be more than one favourite person. For example, they may have a favourite person at work, at church, on social media, in their friend network, whatever. And even the favourite person, it doesn't always have to be the same person, because the favourite person can change from time to time. For example, say they change jobs or they become involved in a new group, or that favourite person has maybe left them or disappointed them somehow. And it's important to remember that the favourite person is not the same as a best friend. Now, they can be the same person, yes, but the favourite person is someone that someone with borderline personality may have obsessive thoughts about. It's someone that they idealise. They can be terrified of losing that person, and this brings up intense insecurity. It is someone they look towards for approval. They turn to for advice. It's someone who they admire, they're attracted to, someone they feel safe with. People with borderline personality struggle to regulate their emotions, and as a result of that, relationships can often be quite volatile with. So they need to hear a lot of things like, you did the right thing, that was a good idea, and so on. Sometimes the favourite person is the person they look to for that. And although the relationship can function quite well, it can be reasonably healthy, it can even be mutually beneficial and supportive for both parties. Sometimes what we can see is the person with borderline personality can feel intense jealousy if their favourite person has other friends or spends any time with anyone else, or even just praises or compliments someone else. They can feel quite distressed if their favourite person maybe likes or comments on someone else's picture or post on social media. And what we see with borderline personality is there's often a fluctuating sense of self. Now, they may change their opinions, they may change their beliefs, their ideology to match those of their favourite person. They may begin to copy their behaviours, dress the same way, start listening to the same kind of music and so on. There can be an anxiety, a fear of having been rejected if they're not constantly receiving attention or being constantly reassured by their favourite person. They may even create a lot of fantasies around their favourite person. There can be a lot of expectations placed on that favourite person, a lot of expectations even placed on themselves and on the relationship. It's up to them, for example, to make the relationship perfect. It's up to their favourite person to make the relationship perfect. So what we often see is an idealised version of their favourite person, of the relationship. And as is so common, the real version and the ideal version very rarely meet. Now, for example, maybe something's been arranged. The favourite person might get held up. They might just forget what time they were supposed to meet. Plans may have to change at the last minute. And the person with borderline can switch very quickly between idealizing and devaluing their favourite person. Because people with borderline personality find it difficult to regulate how they feel, they can often tend to think in very all or nothing kind of terms. They often personalise everything. So if the favourite person disappoints them somehow, then maybe they are selfish, they are deceitful. But there are times as well when that gets turned inwards. If the other person cannot do whatever it is, does not meet their expectation, then it is their fault. They must be unlovable. Which again can bring up intense feelings of abandonment, resentment, disappointment, betrayal, and even self-loathing for being dependent. And someone with borderline personality may feel intense rejection if their favorite person just needs a bit of space, maybe has other plans. They tend to ruminate and obsess over things. Now, as soon as their favorite person is maybe able to meet up again or give them some sense of reassurance, it's almost like nothing has happened. They are back to idealizing them, idealizing the relationship. Now, there can be healthy relationships between someone with borderline personality and their favorite person, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the relationship can also be problematic for both parties. Now, from the person with borderline personality, there can be an intense codependency. They are so attached to that person, they feel as if they can't go any period of time without seeing them or having some kind of contact. They may even go out of their way to find reasons to contact them. But they can also become quite tired of their own lives being so dependent on just one other person. They often ignore other healthy, mutually supportive friendships and relationships that they may have. There can be thoughts of self-harm, there can be suicide ideation if any kind of fallout or breakup happens. They can even find themselves being open to being abused and being manipulated and being coerced, unable to set healthy boundaries with their favourite person. Now, if that favourite person is quite toxic, quite manipulative, this can be quite an unhealthy situation to be in. For the favourite person, however, they may find themselves being abused and being coerced and manipulated. They may feel obligated or emotionally blackmailed into spending time with their friend with borderline. They may feel trapped, may not feel able to spend time with anyone else for fear of an emotional outburst or an explosion or an emotional implosion even. They may even fear just asking for a bit of personal space. And there are times when the very thing that the person with borderline does to try and keep their favourite person, maybe being in constant contact, not giving them space, giving them gifts, doing things, saying things to test whether or not their favourite person cares about them or how much they care. The emotional outbursts, the distress whenever their favourite person doesn't live up to that idealised version. These can sometimes unfortunately be the very things that drives their favourite person away. But actually, more often than not, in relationships like that, both parties tend to end up hurt because relationships like that are unhealthy, they're unfulfilling for both parties, and they're unsustainable. So can someone with borderline personality and their favourite person, can they have a reasonably healthy relationship? Well, yes, I think it's possible they can. Both parties have to respect each other's needs. They have to respect each other's boundaries. Learning to manage each other's as well as their own expectations can help make the relationship a mutually beneficial one. Both parties are going to need personal space. Both parties are going to have other priorities from time to time. For the favourite person, maybe recognize it's not necessarily the choice of the person with borderline personality. It's like sometimes they're missing an internal sense of self-validation and approval that they are trying to meet externally through another person. Now, you can support someone, you can help someone, but that is different between trying to fix them and rescue them. For the person with borderline personality, maybe seek help from someone, maybe a mental health professional. Learn to recognize your feelings and learn how to regulate your feelings. Address unhelpful thinking habits and beliefs and allow other people to have other things going on in their lives. Give them permission to say no once in a while. So that's a brief outline of the relationship between someone with borderline personality disorder and their favourite person. Now, if you have any comments, by all means, please use the comment box below. There are some interesting conversations starting around these videos. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel for future updates on mental health related topics. And until next time, thanks for watching.